Beep, 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 beep. Morning. Here we go. Beep, 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 beep. Scene in journalism. Now, for those of you that aren't aware, the Scene Network, which has been growing and growing over the last few years after its inception, which I remember very well, we now have Scene in Journalism, who have got a nice Substack that you can visit. So links, as usual, are in the doobers. This is particularly interesting because they're talking here. Kath Leng is who's written this. So well done, Kath. It's a superb piece. Thank you very much indeed for this. It's called The PR Tactic of Lived Experience. So let's dig in. Or before we do, subscribe, share, buy me a coffee, join my Substack, anything you can do to help me, support me, or fill out the form and come and have a chinwag about the Warrior Teacher Programme. We're going to have a meeting about it in the next few days. So come and join us. Right, so the BBC's focus on human stories was only offered to trans people. Kath Leng says, if you follow Scene in Journalism and are engaged with women's rights, it's highly likely that the trajectory of your life was changed in June 2013 when 3 people met for afternoon tea at the Langham Hilton in central London. 3 people were there. Steve Herman, who was in charge of BBC Online and therefore the BBC News Style Guide, and 2 trans activists, Leng Montgomery and Paris Lees. I've written before about how the BBC became captured, but two things have brought it back into focus. The first is the Good Law Project's latest anti-women caper. I love the word caper. Something bitter about it. Right, now, stop. The Good Law Project, if you don't know, is run by this guy called Jolyon Morms or something. Anyway, he's a fox clubber. Likes a kimono. Mind you, so do I. So Jolyon Morn, right? So what he's doing is he's trying to get a suit against the EHRC on the basis that no trans voices were heard by the Supreme Court when it was taking evidence about what sex means in the Equality Act, right? It's a nonsense. People keep giving him money. Why do people keep giving him money? What's wrong with them? Mental cases. The second is a piece by BBC East, which platformed a number of trans-identified males saying their lives are a living hell since the Supreme Court judgment that sex means sex in law as well as reality. Why? Why are your lives hell, men? Come on, explain to another man why your lives are hell. Is it because you can't get access to female spaces? Is it? You great galumphin loopy nut jobs? Is it? Is that why? Is it? I can't get in the women's. Yeah, you know why? Because you're a man. So what is it? We'd like to know. Why is your life a living hell? It's a living hell. Why is it? I've got to turn right instead of left in bars and clubs. Why is your life a living hell? These are men in the toilets with me and I'm a woman. No, you're a man. Yeah, but it's a living hell in there. Is it? Why? I don't know. It's just insane. Steve Herman's meeting was not quite the beginning for the BBC, but it sealed the deal. This is the corruption at the heart of the BBC, with infiltration by EDI, DEI, trans activist nutjobs, right? So the problems began in 2010 when an unnamed BBC executive, under Mark Thompson's director generalship, agreed to pay gender identity activists £20,000 to set up that's our money, by the way, to set up a media lobby group to which this could then pay more money to lobby them right back. And then there's a link there, says this is quite well known, to an article that explains that particular dynamic in a bit more detail for you. The friendly afternoon tea in summer 2013 was part of that lobbying. The subbed version, Montgomery and Lees told Herman that the BBC should use trans people's preferred pronouns. In November 2013, self-identification was installed in the BBC Style Guide. There was no fanfare, but it changed everything. This is these crafty gusset fumblers. The scientifically unsubstantiated, counterfactual, indeed demonstrably false theory of gender identity was built into the BBC's framing of all its sex and gender stories. It led to where we are today. I love a good origin story. We're getting a few of these now. You know, how did people come to the fight? What happened to me when I was kicked out of my projects and, all that sort of stuff. And how people came into the fight and they're telling the stories about what happened. We had another one yesterday from somebody who used to be full of supportive of everything and they've realised the truth and moved forward. I love it when people do that because it's a sign that people have gone, I got it wrong and I'm sorry and let's move on and do something new, which I think is great. So I love these kind of origin stories, but they're like Batman origin. or Spider-Man, or where people are coming out going, hey, with great power comes great responsibility. What we've got here is like the bad guys, innit? It's like Mr. Freeze in a tutu, innit? Or the Scarecrow, right? In Twin Set and Pearls. Shit. So this is like an origin story for the baddies. It's all getting a bit comical, isn't it? Right? People concerned with women's rights, this is a great line, were losing a fight they didn't even know had started. There was simultaneously a parallel shift at the BBC around how news stories were told. In the mid-2010s, news managers began encouraging reporters and online writers to tell more human stories, or to tell stories in a more human ways. This was lived experience journalism, perfect for gender identity advocates who are obsessed with their own personal journeys and for whom it is their primary PR tool. Oh, this is so true, isn't it? It's my lived experience, is it? Got any dead experience? It just means it's my opinion. And besides which, experience is a terrible teacher, by the way. Terrible teacher without feedback. So, there's no cogent argument for supplanting sex as a discrimination metric with gender identity. Therefore, lived experience takes on enormous importance. The only tools which identity advocates have in their arsenal are descriptions of how sad they are if you don't comply, enforced by the threat of social ostracism and shame. There we go. That's social ostracism and shame, the tool that's used by these cult-like EDI, DEI leftists generally. Yeah. It has an astonishing value for activists. It doesn't need to be internally balanced. It can rely on being balanced over time and platforms, which means, for example, Keira Bell's story could do the heavy lifting for half a dozen trans personal journeys. This is, again, the parasitical nature of these cult-like behaviours. Recently, one piece on DSDs in sport was offered up as balance for 8 or 9 affirmative transpersonal journeys. The work of Hannah Barnes and Deb Cohen on Newsnight was cited in Plenty of Interactions as balance for multiple features affirming child and teen transition. See? They just attach themselves to everything. Lived experience could therefore be described as a type of unchallengeable emotional agitprop or even emotional blackmail. It is emotional blackmail. I don't care about your lived experience. Do you? The BBC happily stepped in line and churned out dozens of transgender personal journeys online, on live and continuous news, on bulletins, on current affairs, on radio news and radio factual programming. Was it an accident? No. The BBC knew what it was doing. And here's Charlotte Moore, then BBC head of content in 2019. You know what I'm going to do now? I'm going to leave it there. So you have to go and look at the Scene in Journalism Substack, which I highly recommend. So go on, toodle off and find out a bit more, because this is a cracking article from Kath Lang here, exposing the perfidy and the absolute betrayal of women, gay people and children by the BBC, hurried in, rushed in by the likes of Paris Lees and his revolting cult. All right, so go and have a look. I'll see you later. That'll do. It's enough for anyone.